Hey all. So, another pretty sizable war here. It's interesting because it feels like I was lined up to take a lot of fights this war, mostly with Carl. But this defense was very well set up, and I don't think that's because they didn't take him into account. Because if you're going to try and cause a death against Absorbing Man, I think two fights like this, Void and then Weapon X, are exactly how you go about it. You throw in a science champion with an extra threat so that if something goes wrong, it's probably going to cascade significantly more, and you're going to hurt more for it because of the class disadvantage, and it's going to take longer for you to win the fight. And then you pick somebody like Weapon X who has a threat outside the energy resist that you need to use on this path and the two immunities that Magma gives you in Weapon X's bleeds. And I don't think that the fact I'm taking this with Carl necessarily proves that he doesn't have counters. It's more that just I've been doing enough of these fights that I feel comfortable taking these slight extra stretches with him. But I just want to say that out loud because it is kind of an interesting wrinkle that he does seem to be a little bit in that space. Not that there are no ways to counter him. I've absolutely seen deaths with Carl, and I think this exact placement right here is a good way to go about that. But in comfortable hands, he certainly is hard to slow down, which fits the skill cap that I tried to build into him, but it's interesting in this war in particular, as we'll continue to talk about. So I've taken that Void fight enough that I don't think I really needed to go over exactly what was going on, but I did slow it down even more than usual, really count out my combos, and I think that's about as good as it goes. Similarly, this Weapon X fight I've taken recently, I've sometimes had to take a couple risks because it feels like he doesn't throw specials right away. And that can get you a little bit in trouble on pausing your forms. I've also had the AI do a couple odd things. See, right there, he clearly tried to catch me with a light. And if I had not been perfectly on top of it, I probably would have eaten the rest of that combo and got 4 bleeds on me in that moment. But if you get just a little bit lucky with the AI at the start and they throw the special right away, and then you stay on top of things and just have patience and wait for your openings, this is exactly how well this fight can go. I doubt I'm ever going to do it better than this because this one felt really good. We're going to go ahead and refine here. That's actually one mistake I made. I should have refined the previous combo because then I would have been set up better to even potentially kill through block by landing a lot of incinerates with that big vulnerability. But yeah, about as good as that can go. So now we're up against Kingpin again here. And as I've mentioned before, Carl doesn't actually counter the global this season. He doesn't do anything about prowess, and he has very weak situational prowess control. So it's not really going to be something that you're going to use in matchups like this. However, one thing he does have that is helping us here is that if you are willing to give up the extra damage that comes from critical bursts, his crit rate is pretty low. It's obviously not 0, given the fact that I just procced 3 prowess in that last special too, but it is low enough that you can usually just kind of slow play, take the hit to damage, and still get through these fights, especially the ones that you can afford to play in Magma. And obviously, this being a hazard shift fight, Magma is exactly what we need, and so this one works out really well for us. But you can see it involves blocking quite a few special 2s. It's another benefit of Magma because Kingpin's special 2 happens to be energy, so that's working out for us. But there are other specials that are obviously not. I don't think I really need to talk about why Carl is good against Annihilus at this point. Short buffs, armor breaks. He ramps very, very quickly. But this is another interesting path as far as slowing Carl down, because the fight after this is absolutely an instant death if things go poorly. And we'll kind of see why as we get there. But Storm is just going to be constantly proccing more prowess, constantly gaining power, and therefore she is going to always have unblockable specials that hit extremely hard. And it is very much going to be a fight where basically I'm going into it with an invuln boost because I understand the risk. But if I got hit by 2 specials in this, it would probably be a death. Even with the rank disparity, I might be able to get away with a bit more because of the fact that it's not that she can't crit against Carl, but it is less likely. But we're not going to have energy resistance because this fight would be a little bit riskier trying to maintain Magma than it is trying to maintain Uru. And so that means that if we get hit, we are probably going to feel the whole thing. May not be a crit, but she may not need it on this node with all this prowess. And you're definitely seeing some of that here. Now, the good news is that once the prowess starts proccing, that's the threat, because that's all the power gain and that's all the extra damage. But that's also our fuel, because they are limited duration buffs, and that means that eventually we're going to get into a cycle where we are constantly benefiting from Mystic Dispersion. Now, I probably should have thrown a special there, but I was a little bit worried about her going red. And so ultimately I decided, okay, it doesn't feel like she's going to throw it. I'm just going to go for it, close out the combo, and I was going to throw my special 3 after that. I knew I still had 1 hit left on my invulnerability boost, which was very much informing my behavior there. But luckily we went ahead and closed it out. Rintrah is another fight where if you are comfortable, Carl is a good answer, but it could very well go against you. We do still have the invulnerability boost active here if his power gain gets away from us. But with the exception of that one right there, I'm not planning on triggering the power gain all that much. You don't really need to. So I am throwing heavies a fair amount here because there's no downside to landing crits. It's just damage. We are going for true light intercepts when we can because this is ebb and flow intercept. But in general, outside of when I am actually getting credit for the intercept, I'm not worrying too much about that because my focus is on keeping his charges down. You'll see right there, I didn't go for an intercept to get the pause. I went for the interrupt after his heavy with the double light. Again, unless I'm turning off protection, that's what I stick to because it's safer. You see me go for it there, but then to make sure I hold on to my forms, I do that double light after a heavy, and then I go for the true intercept again after I have the pause. Because that's the safer way to play this out. Make sure the pause is taken care of first, then get protection off, and we close it out nice and quick. Moving on to this Mangog here, it's definitely been interesting to see a version of this fight with almost rank 5 stats and block penetration pretty much all the time. That's what most people are throwing on 7-star defenders. Honestly, the amount feels like it's probably a bit overtuned to me. That is definitely something we may look at some point. But for now, this is the reality right now, and it does mean that the chip damage can add up a little bit if I'm not careful, and that can cause problems. But this is still a fairly similar fight to what it has always been for Reed, which is that if he insists on pushing to his special 2 right away, then I'm going to push him to another special 2 to lock in that passive and reduce the damage from it. If he throws his special 1 right away, this time I actually did fully intend to be hit by the end of that first special 1, so that the second one locked in the passive. That was very intentional because then, in only 2 bars of power to him, we already have the passive that gives us extra combat power gain and allows us to ramp that much more quickly. I could have thrown that special 1 there. It probably would have pushed him over a bar. The stagger would have been up. And I think we would have handled the unstoppable and the unblockable. This one I got caught off guard by. I did try to dex there and just I guess, was a little bit late and fully ate that. But that is the other reason that we spend so much time ramping those passives, because even after Aspect of Evolution had boosted up his attack a lot, we had still cut it by 75% plus inequity, which is why that basically just tickled. And then that pushed us to our special 3. We threw that. That got rid of the unstoppable and the unblockable. And after that, there's no way he's going through another full cycle to actually be a threat before we finish the fight. So, not my cleanest, but proving that this is still, even against 7 stars, a very, very safe fight for Reed. And I think even against a 7-star rank 2, that would be my counter of choice. We would just probably be going up for a little bit longer after that special 3. So now we have another Korg boss. You've seen me take this a few times. I chose to use a regen boost here. Again, kind of speaking about comfort. If you are learning this fight for the first time or still pretty new to it, I do recommend the invulnerability boost, especially while we have this global that involves extra power gain. Because if he hits you and somehow lands a crit, it's really going to hurt. If he just lands a combo into you with Opportunist, it's really going to hurt because you're in Magma. If he gets to his special 3 and throws it, you're probably dead because of Opportunist and because resistances don't help against special 3s. But if you can avoid those threats, then the invulnerability doesn't actually help you, because the primary threat of this fight, once you have it under control, is block damage more than anything else. And so that's why I use the regen boost, because I know I'm going to have regen from refining my forms after a certain amount of time passes. But I know that until then, I'm going to be taking some extra damage, and so I just use the regen boost to mitigate that chip. We go ahead and continue to play the way that we like to. We push him to the special 2. We don't hit his block because he's over 6. We bait this out knowing he's going to go unblockable and unstoppable and not caring, because he does tend to throw the special 2 then. He throws this unblockable. You'll notice in this fight and in a lot of Korg fights, when he's not unblockable, I usually don't go for the full dex. That's just kind of a risk management thing, because if I go for the dex and miss it, I'm probably getting 2 hits. That's 2 opportunities for him to crit and do a lot of damage. Whereas if he's just shooting it into my block, he cannot crit at all. And then I know I'm okay relying on my energy resist, and I can dex out of the last hit and punish it. But if it's unblockable, I still make sure that I dual Korg enough to make sure that I have the full dex down like that. And then we go ahead and punish it. We also do not hit his block even sometimes when we can, because that is just, in my opinion, the AI trying to parry us. See, there we go for it once. But it's not my first instinct. It's important when the AI goes passive, if you can afford it, be willing to be passive. Just wait them out, and eventually they'll give you an opening again, and that is very much what we did there. So, yeah, really happy with how this war went. I feel like this was a good showcase of how comfortable I am with Carl at this point, because really the only hard target fight I took was Annihilus. Everything else had at least one asterisk on it, where it was like, I mean, yeah, he'll work, but you'll have to keep this in mind. And I'm just really happy with that. Seems to be how he's feeling, because he's very powerful, he's helpful in war, but I do feel like I'm earning it. And I absolutely adore this champion, and I am so grateful that I have the opportunity to directly add things to this game, because it makes wars like this so much fun. So yeah, just really happy with how things are going right now. But hope you guys enjoyed this. We did end up losing this war. It was a number of uncharacteristic deaths, but I don't say that to take away from the other defense, because part of the reason that we had uncharacteristic deaths is because their defense was very well set up, and it forced us into doing a couple things where we were kind of relying on people to stretch, similar to what you saw in my war. And if you do that enough, Eventually, somebody's going to stretch too far. It doesn't matter how good a player they are. Eventually, it will happen. That's the whole reason for having a good defense in the first place. And they got us on this one. So, props to Salty for that. Well earned win on them. We're going to keep trying to learn from our lessons and clean some things up. I'm still feeling good about this season. It's early. We finished high last season. We knew we were going to come out of the gate against some heavy hitters, and that's what's happened. Again, hope y'all enjoyed this, and until next time, thank you so much for watching, and take care.